Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. I have been speaking lately with regards to the topic of a man's value, and I have covered so far what I think is a comprehensive part of half of the entire conversation. I started the conversation speaking about women, and I have addressed the same, you might say, valuation techniques used and used to assess a woman's value, and I've used the same metric for assessing a man's value. They are one and the same. We make subtle adjustments as we go along, depending on the sex in question. There are four aspects to how you judge someone's value in the marketplace of dating and relationships, to make it very, very specific. Sexual marketplace value, SMV, non-sexual marketplace value, NSMV, reproductive fertility value, RFV, and economic intrinsic value, EIV. So far, I have dealt with the first two. Today, I will be speaking to the third, RFV, your reproductive fertility value. I'm speaking about men in this instance, but the nature of fertility, recognizing that when we're talking about relationships, cannot be done without both parties. So I am going to juxtapose both the female and the male, but I will try to address both. In any case, I should start with the man's perspective. Age is a determining factor in understanding fertility. Perhaps I should have started by saying this will be a rather touchy conversation. So let me start by encouraging anyone who's listening to understand that I am sharing this from a place of peace, in good faith, but fundamentally I'm trying to share what I wished that I was taught at a younger age. So take this not as a criticism, whether you are a man or you are a woman, not as a complaint. There might be emotive conversations, but keep in mind that the overall objective or outcome is that we are able to make better decisions, or rather you, especially if you are younger, are able to make better decisions in your life as you go along. I separate the people I speak into, men particularly, into three groups: 0 to 18, 18 to 35, and then 35 and above. The middle group is my core constituents. As a matter of fact, my main, those who subscribe to my channel, fall within that group, 18 to 35, my core group. In many ways, this is what I wish my father could have taught me about relationships. And I'm hoping that if you fall within either the first or the second group, that I can make an impact with today's session. And if you are in the third group, hopefully it's not too late and you can learn something from it. Let me start as follows. When we talk about reproductive fertility value, yes, we use that as a metric for women. Why? There is a subset of men who want to be fathers, who want to have a family. And generally speaking, men want to have their own family. We don't take too lightly the idea that we audition to be stepfathers at the same time as we are auditioning someone to be our wives. We prefer to raise our own children, and it comes natural. It's a biological instinct, and it's quite unnatural to raise another person's offsprings, except for the exceptions. We're always taught and encouraged to look out for the widows and the orphans. But in the West, we've raised a community of people where there is an expectation that a woman can come with children and a man can accept the children of other men and therefore transfer his resources to another man's offsprings. Even in the wild, that is something that is not quite taken favorably. From, you might say, the king of the jungle the lions, to the sheep of the jungle. Sheeps. It's not something that is welcomed. We tend to want our own. And so, for those men who are a subsection of all of men in the dating or the relationship marketplace, one of the criteria that will be used is a woman's reproductive fertility value. Now, similarly, a woman who wants to have a family and who intends to be married first, before having a child family, should be questioning and asking the same questions about the man. What is his reproductive fertility value? Age plays a huge pivotal role, because age is the correlation between age and fertility is so high that we say it's mostly causal. Are there exceptions to the rule? Of course. A woman has a limitation with regards to age, with regards to fertility. The older she gets, the less fertile she becomes, for a number of reasons. Let me start by simply saying, a woman's quantity of eggs and quality is fixed from the moment she starts a menstrual cycle. That cycle has started much earlier than it used to be. There was a time when it was, in certain countries, 70. Sometimes, in certain countries, 50. We have found in the West that our number is trending towards 11 for several reasons. One, the absence of fathers. The absence of fathers by the virtue of the fact that sometimes what you find, and this is a biological fact, a girl raised without a father, the moment from 11 onwards, she comes into the presence of a man with very high testosterone, and a man who is driven and ambitious, a man who is attractive, in however you define that attractiveness. A young girl is pushed into the process of going into a menstrual cycle or puberty earlier. Had her father been in her life, this is weird, there's something instinctive in her biology through the scent of a man that prevents what would be foreign sense from activating the neurosecretary in the woman that starts the process of generating the eggs or releasing the eggs that she has. Before then, all of the eggs are effectively kept, you might say, in a vault, in protection, waiting for the right time and age for the release into the bank account for withdrawals. Raising a two-parent family, that vault stays locked until the right moment. In the absence of a father who acts like a protector, you have people who, if they come into contact, not explicitly, sometimes implicitly, the girl is forced into puberty and the menstrual process quite early. So what you're finding is women are starting their menstrual cycles and puberty at 11. Generally speaking, your Option guide will tell you 35 and above is high risk pregnancy. So women, generally speaking, if you're starting puberty at 12 or 11, between 11 and 35, assuming 11 is when it starts, you technically have roughly 24 years before you're in high risk. Remember, the quantity and the quality of eggs are known and fixed for a woman. They're limited. Until you start to have what we call deterioration, because those eggs are released every month in a certain fashion relative to the quantity of reserve. And so what you find is the decline of the quality and the quantity of eggs is higher the younger she is. And as she approaches 30, the less fertile she becomes, all things remaining equal. Are there exceptions? Of course. Now, for the man in question, we do not have the same. Nature is not fair in how it deals its hand. It requires women to get their early decisions quite early and fast. Men do not have a limitation. We produce sperm as we go. A man can continue to produce sperm until his 70s and 80s, and then you see a steep decline. A woman from 35 and over starts to see a very sharp decline. So you're finding actually for men, the concept of reproductive fertility value is not as significant as it is for women. Men up to age 80 will continue to reproduce sperm because we do not have a menstrual cycle in the same way as women. Now, that does not mean that the quality and the quantity of sperm we produce remains the same. As a matter of fact, the younger the man is, the higher the probability that the quality of his sperm and the quantity will be much better, just like a woman's eggs. Let me contrast this as I juxtapose both sexes. In the sessions that I have done, I did a session some time ago where I used a pen and a paper, and it seemed very crude. And effectively, I was identifying how a woman's reproductive fertility value drops over time. That hasn't come from myself. This is something that has come from those who've studied biology. Urologists will tell you everything that I have shared so far about a man's sperm to be true. Your obs and gyn, your OBGYN will tell you the same thing about a woman's eggs and everything that I've shared about women to be true. The key part of the whole reproductive fertility value comes with regards to the ability to fertilize an egg, sperm and egg coming together, and then bringing the fertilized egg to term without any complications. So what I'm going to talk about is two concepts: fertilization and miscarriage. Let me start with the women. A woman who is 30 years and younger, recognizing that a woman actually goes through that process or cycle once a month. With regards to fertilization, if she's 30 years and younger, there is only a 20% chance that in the event of sperm meeting the egg, that there will be fertilization. 20%. Now recognize that only occurs once a month and once every year. So 12 times in a year, a woman has the opportunity to actually have fertilization take place. For each month, when there is a release of new eggs, and when the sperm is allowed to come in contact with the eggs, there is only a 20% chance of fertilization if the woman is 30 years and younger. This is why we use the age 30 as a marker, because you start to see results that are much, much, much more difficult to accept. That number drops to 18% if the woman goes from 31 to 33. The probability of fertilization in a monthly cycle for a woman who is 31 to 33 is 18%. That is low. I'm going to come back and address these. Now, as the woman goes from 34 to 37, that number drops to 11%. As she approaches 40 years, that number drops to roughly 5% or less. Now, the key part of all of this is as follows. If you're looking at your reproductive fertility value as a woman, your obs and gyn will tell you as a woman, if you're 30 years and below, recognizing that you have a 20% chance of fertilization, in order to have a probability of achieving 100% success, you need 5 months, which is why the encouragement to women is you need about 6 months, 5 to 6 months of trial before you get pregnant. You fertilize, have the fertilization process be successful. For women who are above 30, 31 to 33, you will need between 6 and 9 months by virtue of the fact that only 18% of the time would you find success. So think about it this way. 30 years and younger, 20% chance of fertilization. So you need 5 months. 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. 18%, you need 18%, and you count the number of months, because it's cumulative, that you would need to get to the point of 100%. Roughly 7 months, so between 6 and 9 months. If you get to age 34 to 37, it drops to 11%. So you need roughly 10 months, which is why they encourage 9 months to a year. Now this simply means, as I turn down my my marker because I'm getting notifications, this simply means that a woman who is 34 to 37 will require, in terms of having the opportunity to fertilize, will require twice the time as a woman who is 30 years. Now I'm going to speak about something that I think is even more painful, which is miscarriage. The first step is fertilization. The second stage is actually bringing it to term. In between fertilizing the egg and bringing the egg to term, things happen. Unfortunately, there is a 25% risk of miscarriage for women who are 35 years and over. 25%. So even if you successfully fertilize the egg, you have a 25% chance that you will miscarry. If you're 40 years old or over, the probability of miscarriage after fertilization, recognizing that you only have a 5% chance of fertilizing the egg if you're 40 years and over, you then have half of that taken away from you by virtue of the risk of miscarriage. I hope you can see that for women, age plays a huge role in making sure that you get the early decisions quickly sorted out so that you do not find yourself in a place where you have regrets. Now, I didn't know all of these things from a young age. And we're encouraged that we are more like men, and girls are being encouraged to think about marriage from 35 and think about starting children from 36 and 37 at the point where the probability of success is trending towards zero. Now, the reason I haven't focused on men with regards to this is because men do not bear the penalty of carrying the eggs. So we do not have miscarriages. We simply have to release the sperm. And therefore, because we can reproduce sperm, although there are lifestyle behaviors that affect the quality of sperm, we can reproduce sperm until we're 70 or 80. Here is some recommendation, and I think this is a key thing to keep in mind. A woman's value from a reproductive perspective is known in advance, is given to her. A man's value, effectively he has to do things to create the value by virtue of the fact that he reproduces his sperm. So providing his testosterone is high, his lifestyle is on point, his environment is doing well, he has less stress, no sicknesses, and he has no genetic issues, he will reproduce sperm as he goes along. A key part of the whole conversation is, well, if you're in the marketplace, how do you as a woman know what your reproductive fertility value is without using your age? Because if you use your age and the numbers I've shared so far, then you will simply say, you can estimate from 18 to 22, first 5 years, 23 to 27, 27 to 32, 32 to 35, 35 and above, up to 40 and 40 and above. You can work out what that would be. What you find is women who are in their 25s or younger have a much higher reproductive fertility value. Women who are 35 and over have a much lower by virtue of age. But there is a way that this can be measured. It's called your ovarian reserve. Your ovarian reserve is how you as a woman, through your obs and gyn, your obstetrician and gynecologist, can measure the size of your follicles. The follicles that are released, think about your bank account. And if you think about the fact perhaps you have withdrawals from your bank account every month, think about income expense. You're earning so much, and people, generally speaking, we tend to match our expenses to our income. Our outflow rises up to meet our inflow. So you find that people who make a lot of money generally have a lot of expenses. Same person, if they earn much less, the outflow reduces. The younger the woman is, the more she has more follicles released and more eggs released on a monthly cycle. But the older she gets, it becomes proportionate to what is called the ovarian reserve. So whatever you have in the bank account of reserve, the proportionality of that is released on a monthly basis. If she's 18 or 19, a lot is released because there's so much more left. When she turns 30 or 40, she has much less in the reserve and therefore much less is released. So one way is to determine through tests the size of the follicles being released. And if you check the follicles, this is where your obs and gyn can do this for you. The follicles on both of your ovaries will determine how much you're releasing per month and therefore how much reserves you have. It's a test that can be done easily. For example, if you're generating and releasing between 3 and 5 or 2 and 3, then there's a correlation that you have a low reserve. Whereas if you have about 25 or 30, there's a correlation that you have a higher reserve. So the number of eggs being released is a useful methodology for analyzing your reproductive fertility value. There's something called an AMH, and therefore it can be measured. It measures the movement, and therefore you can ascertain as a woman what your reproductive fertility value is. There are women who are much older, who have more follicles and more ovarian reserve, or I actually use the word more quality, because you can release 20, 30 every month, and none of those will be fertilized. And someone else who has a 2 or 3 per month, who's older, releases just 2 or 3, and 1 gets fertilized. Are there exceptions to the rule? Of course. But the key part of what I'm suggesting here is that you can go and you can get what's called an AMH, and have your follicles measured. Your AMH measurement is what will tell you, specifically as a woman, your reproductive fertility value. And the key part of all of this is that what you do this process over a period of months, maybe 6 months. You don't just do it once, because what you're trying to determine is month 1, maybe you have 25 in month 2, maybe you have 25 in month 7, maybe you have 23. That simply means you're quite healthy. But if you did in the first month and it was 20, and the second month and it was 10, and the third month and let's say it was 6, then one of the things you would want to consider is freezing your eggs as fast as possible. Now, this is a very intrusive process. I won't speak to that in today's session, but it's very intrusive. Let me move to men. It is very important, and let me speak to men very directly. It is very important to do a sperm analysis as young as possible. My recommendation is from age 20. I would even say from age 18. But at 18, you're still too young. As an adult, you just have come into being an adult. And it's hard to believe at 18 that you might have sperm issues 20 years into the future. 20 is a good time. Men, you have to get your sperm analysis done as early as possible. Your sperm analysis will tell you the quality of sperm you have. Ejaculation does not always mean you have good sperm. Most of the time, what people ejaculate does not consist of high quality sperm. The key part of doing this early is that so you can freeze your sperm. It's less intrusive, it's much easier for men. And if you bear in mind that you do not know what will happen in the future, decisions you make and the lifestyle you lead could endanger the quality of your sperm over the years. So even if you feel that you do not want to have children, freeze your egg, so freeze your sperm at a young age. The younger the better. If you never get to use it, that's great. It would be the same thing as ejaculating into a bottle or into a cup. There is nothing intrusive, especially when compared to the female method of extracting the eggs. That is expensive, time consuming, and psychologically intrusive. For a man, it's no better than ejaculation. But you can freeze your eggs so that you can guarantee that you have sperm, should you want sperm in the future. Sperm analysis is a must for young men. I encourage this. I never knew about this as a young man. I wish I did. But we go through life as men, believing that we're just fine. You need to ensure that you do a sperm analysis, and a urologist will tell you this, that what I've shared so far is correct. So don't get triggered if you are a man. Don't get triggered if you are a woman. Your urologist and your obs and gyne will tell you that what I have shared so far is correct. For men, generally speaking, between age 20, there should be what I consider to be a sperm analysis that you do every 5 years, preferably 3 to 5 years. And during that period, just freeze your eggs. Remember, as men, we can continue to produce sperm. And therefore, there is this confidence we have that, well, we'll just be fine. But you should understand, things deteriorate very fast. And every 3 to 5 years, go do a sperm analysis. And in the period, just keep freezing your eggs because you're ejaculating every other day. Minimize the number of porn activities you have. Minimize the quantity of ejaculation you're having on a daily basis. Sperm retention helps, but get your sperm analyzed. Start freezing your eggs from a young age. Let me conclude by saying a few things, because I think this is key. In 1 out of 5 times or occasions, in other words, 20% of the time, whenever there is inability to fertilize or reproduce, it comes as a result of the quality of the sperm. It comes from usually genetic issues on the man's side, or it comes as a result of low quality sperm. Now, what this also means is 4 out of 5 times, that responsibility is based on the quality of the egg and, more importantly, how healthy the woman's eggs are. So the woman bears more of the responsibility for reproducing because the man's sperm doesn't have the same timeline as the woman's eggs. The man's sperm is also produced when he needs it, as opposed to the woman's eggs that are produced and are fixed at the point when you might say the reserve is opened, the egg reserve is opened. So keep in mind that there are genetic defects in that 20% where men are responsible for either failure to fertilize and conceive. And you can have issues. Now, I have had men say several times that there is no risk in waiting it out. Well, there are risks. There could be genetic issues. There could be issues linked with your lineage, and the sperm analysis will determine whether there is an issue. There could be lifestyle changes that are made that expose you to having very poor sperm and actually being infertile as a young man or as you age as a man. So let me leave you with both men and women with 2 words of encouragement. Your reproductive fertility value is what it is. There are lifestyle changes you can make to maintain that value, but it would be wise to take into account the fact that nature starts to shut its gates at a certain age for women, and for men, lifestyle changes starts to diminish the probability of success. And if the parties can successfully invest, take some of your eggs and some of your sperms and have you frozen very early, very young. I think feminism has done so much damage to women that in the younger days of a woman's life, she thinks she doesn't need a man and doesn't want a family. But as she approaches 35 and 40, she realizes the errors of her ways, and then she starts trying to make the fastest decisions and selects the wrong man, only to find out that, unfortunately, the gates have been shut. By freezing your eggs early, you have the higher possibility of getting the best eggs. You also have the possibility of knowing where you stand, particularly from the perspective of the quality of eggs you have in your ovarian reserve. As a man, by freezing your sperm early, you guarantee yourself that you will, should you change your mind, and should you come to a place where you've found yourself, achieved success, developed your purpose, fulfilling your dreams, when you decide to start a family, it's not too late. The price we pay as a society for delaying important decisions can be very great. The damage, unfortunately, affects women much more than it does men. On the other hand, women are nurturers. They can raise another woman's children and love the children to the same extent, maybe not quite, but in a manner similar as they would theirs. Men, on the other hand, find it more hard. Therefore, somehow the burden is on men to ensure that when you're dating a woman, as you transition from just dating to relationship and marriage, if you want to have a family, you should value the woman's reproductive fertility value. And the process of doing that is to simply say, both of you should actually go, sit down with the obs and gyne, get your follicles checked, do your AMH analysis, find out how fertile you are, find out the probability of conception, make sure she has a high reproductive fertility value. As the woman, make sure he has a high reproductive fertility value. Go see his urologist, get his sperm analysis done, find out whether he has the possibility. Now, this does not guarantee that both parties that have a high reproductive fertility value will reproduce successfully. No. All we're doing here is trying to work out what the odds are and to make good decisions. If becoming a father is effectively primacy for you as a man, it doesn't matter how great a woman she is and how loving she is. If she cannot reproduce for you, and if you do not have the humility to accept her as she is and adopt, there's a high possibility that union will dissolve, because effectively one person will be demanding from the other party what nature has said they will not give. So it's better not to go into the relationship and invest so much time, dedication and effort and resources without ensuring that both parties are compatible. Now, for those who do not want to have kids, the whole essence of reproductive fertility value makes no sense, because you're not evaluating each other based on your ability to reproduce, because you do not want to have children. Now, I wouldn't put men who are 35 years and below in that category. And I will not put women who are 35 years and below in that category. Why? The younger the person is, the less likely they really know what they want. The wisdom of time has not really set in for them yet. Therefore, they might say, I don't want to have kids. But when the man turns 40 and 45, suddenly he realizes life is about relationships and people and love and community and well-being and family. Then he starts to seek. But it could be too late, because he did not do his sperm analysis, did not freeze and reserve sperm, and therefore did not start the family journey early as possible. I would say this in closing to men. 35 is a good age. Don't leave it too late. Now to women, 27 is a good age. Don't leave it too late. Don't listen to the voice of doubt and fear and reason around you. Think about nature. Work with nature. You are intelligent. Nature is intelligent. The two intelligences are trying to work together to achieve an outcome. Nature is always on your side. But if you refuse to be on the right side, there's a possibility that eventually when you wake up to what is a natural instinct of yours, it might be too late. I hope it isn't in your case. Wish you all the best.